Hi, I'm Callie Cranfield, and this is my evaluation plan for Department of Juvenile Justice. So, Department of Juvenile Justice, or DJJ, is a part of the North Carolina's Department of Public Safety, also referred to as NCDPS, and is focused on juvenile delinquency prevention by providing supervision to juveniles on probation and diversion plans. They provide services such as community service, counseling, parenting support, and skills classes. That is just a few in Union County. They have other programs in Anson, Stanley, and Richmond for District 20, which is the district that Union is in. However, it does vary by district to district. There are many districts within North Carolina, so they will all have different services that they are going to provide to juveniles. So again, just to recap, the mission of DJJ is to reduce and prevent juvenile delinquency by effectively intervening, educating, and treating youth in order to strengthen families and increase public safety. And the vision is a seamless, equitable, comprehensive juvenile justice system that fully invests in the success of our employees and provides timely, age-appropriate services to youth and their families in need in the most appropriate settings. So that's kind of a brief overview of DJJ. I know I've talked about it a couple of times now through the semester. Um, but that's just kind of a very brief overview of what is done on a day-to-day, as well as the mission and vision again, just to kind of recap that. So moving on, about the evaluation plan. So what is an evaluation plan? So it is a structured document that outlines how a project or program will be assessed for effectiveness and success. It details the methods, data collection, analysis, and reporting procedures to ensure a valid and reliable evaluation process. This plan helps in understanding what the project did, how it worked, and the significance of its outcomes, ultimately informing program improvement and decision making. So this is very important in all kinds of different organizations. Again, it kind of just helps to assess how a project or program, how effective it is and how successful it is, so that you can move forward with it or kind of pull back and try something else. This is especially important in DJJ because if something is not that effective in the juvenile justice system, then they have to pivot and try doing something else. So it's really important to have an evaluation plan, and this is done a lot with the state and up in like the headquarters in North Carolina and Raleigh. They do a lot of evaluation plans. They don't do as many on the local level, but they definitely do it. So I kind of showed some pictures. So it's the program evaluation cycle. So engagement and understanding, evaluation plan, data collection, data analysis and interpretation, reporting and recommendations, and then implementation. And it kind of, again, goes into a cycle just based on the program or the project. And then I have this little 1 through 7 of why I need to evaluate, what do I need to find out, what will it measure, or what will I measure, how will I measure it, who will I collect data from, when will I collect data, and what will I do with the data. So again, this is really important. They do this a lot in the state, up in headquarters in Raleigh, not so much on the local level, but these are all questions that they are asking, especially when they're implementing a new program or a new project within the state. So the outcomes that I had previously talked about in the logic model were the training programs will help supervisors and court counselors be better prepared for situations that may arise in the fields and how to best handle it. More programs will allow juveniles to have access to more resources, and it will allow them to learn more life skills. It will also allow them to have resources that are more spread out amongst the county instead of them just being in Monroe, making it easier on parents to get their juvenile programs. Again, Union County is a very big county. It can take about 45 minutes to get from one end to another, especially without the bypass. So just having more resources spread out through like Marshville, Wingate area, Monroe, Wesley Chapel, Indian Trail will definitely help. And then having more supervisors will allow each county to have the support they need instead of the supervisors being stretched thin across 4 counties. Now, I know I said we don't really do an evaluation plan on the local level. However, for this presentation, I'm going to kind of talk about hypotheticals for planning and programs that could go into place for this, especially for training. I talk a lot about the training piece, but I'll kind of go into that in a second. So the evaluation program outcomes. So training in place quarterly on anti-racism and eliminating bias. Red training done yearly to give an overview on the demographics of each of the juveniles living in each district. Usually districts are 4 counties, just depending on how big the counties are in that district. So really the biggest one in District 20 is Union County, followed by Stanley. So they have 2 decent sized ones, but like I believe Mecklenburg is in their own just because of how big Mecklenburg is, and then um Raleigh is in their own kind of jurisdiction as well, just because of how big and how populated those are. So then we have assessing each juvenile in order to get an idea of their strengths and weaknesses, family history, as well as criminal history to gauge what the juvenile might need in terms of resources. Evaluating cases regularly to establish if all rules of juveniles probation are being followed, making sure juveniles are still receiving the level of care needed, making sure the juveniles' cases don't need to be closed out, and then ensuring that if services are needed, they are receiving that service. And then finally, staying up to date on current laws that are going into effect in the next fiscal year, staying up to date with their trainings, and then including motivational interviewing, red trainings, and de-escalation tactics. Those are stuff that has to kind of be done every year just to make sure that they are staying up on that. But again, these are kind of some programs that they could do. So again, like training in place. Currently we have to assess every juvenile and regularly evaluate cases. So that was the closest one I have right now. And then staying up to date on current laws, of course, that's going to be required. And then also that training piece that goes in there. So the tools that they currently have in place are feedback from court counselors by supervisors and chiefs to report back what needs to be changed in the districts and in the state. They can kind of go to, like, the chief can go to his supervisor and talk about the feedback that he's getting from court counselors and the supervisors, so then they can bring it up in the state. They do have meetings yearly to kind of talk about what's going on in the districts, and if there's any issues that need to be addressed, so they can bring it up there. Trainings in order to provide court counselors with the tools they need to succeed in the field. I had talked about the last presentation of Samarkand, so that is a 3-week camp. They stay there Monday through Friday, go home on the weekend, but they are required to attend that prior to taking on cases and supervising juveniles, just in order to train them on de-escalation, hand to hand if that is needed, everything like that. Monthly meetings with all staff in the district to discuss what went right in the previous month as well as what needs to be addressed. And then also discussing new things that are being passed within the state and overall policy planning. A lot of what we're talking about currently is the new law that went into effect that 18 or 17 and 16-year-olds are able to go into adult prison depending on the crime, but it also scales it back so that they are now being included in juvenile prison and juvenile detention centers, so that that's a better placement for them as of before. 16 and up would have been in adult corrections. And then another thing that's been brought up recently has been the fiscal changes. They've talked about raises and then also budget cuts as well in the state. It's been kind of a back and forth. So just discussing new things that are being passed within the state and then the policy planning. And then regular meetings in the county to see how cases are progressing to ensure that court counselors and juveniles are receiving all the necessary resources as well. That's typically done with the supervisors. It's just called case reviews. But then they also do a county by county meeting with the chief just to kind of see if there's any issues going on. And then also just trainings and meetings with supervisors, again, unrelated to cases, just to kind of see how like case service time and everything has been going. So using data to improve processes. So using the RED training and the juvenile justice data that they have published online, in order to see how the state districts and county have either risen cases or decreased. The juvenile justice data is available online. The RED training is not. It is exclusive to working in the state as a court counselor. You have access to that information, but other than that, anybody can log on and see the juvenile justice data to see the amount committed into the YDC. So moving on from that point, I do kind of talk about that. So it shows the amount of juveniles that have been committed to the YDC, how many juveniles are on diversion plans or how many are on probation, the amount of complaints the district receives, as well as this is by county as well. You can break it down by state, district, or county. And then finally, the most common crimes that are in that district or county. So then it also shows what the court counselors need to focus on, as well as what populations of juveniles need more support, which is supported by the YAZI reports that are being submitted by the court counselors. While juveniles are being supervised, they are required to update YAZIs regularly. It is every 90 days it's 60 or 90 days they have to update it. So having to really keep on top of that. But currently in Union County, they are having more support needed for Hispanic kids. So that's been kind of what's been focused on recently. But it can change from year to year as well as by month. They can see that if they need to pull back and kind of focus somewhere else. And then finally, having a data quality report or the DQR that comes out monthly in order to ensure that court counselors are properly inputting data, updating necessary forms and YAZI reports, and are meeting all their case service time for all the juveniles. So having that data quality report definitely helps them to kind of keep on track with what they're doing and kind of just helps improve what they're doing on a day-to-day, making sure they have everything up to date and they can provide the best care that is needed for these juveniles and the best supervision. Then we have using data to improve outcomes. So using the juvenile data that's been collected over the past fiscal years. So our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th. So using those in order to establish what is working in the county and what needs to be changed, and then highlighting the progress through the year as well. Seeing how training is working while court counselors are working in the field and seeing how they're using it in fields and what they aren't using. That would really fall back on the supervisors as they are supervising the cases. So seeing what they're actively working on in the field versus what some things that they kind of forget while they're in the field, what they could use more training. That can help improve the outcomes of just the supervision and then helping improve the outcomes of just like the training programs that we had talked about before. I also talked about in the last presentation about having specialized in-person training if they feel like they need additional support in training. So you could have a supervisor that would recommend training for the court counselors so that they're able to kind of get the help that they need, or if the supervisor sees that they need additional work in areas, they can work on that. And then focusing on pulling statistics on e-trainings to see how long it takes court counselors to complete training, what they're taking more time on in certain sections, and then the quiz/test results to see what areas need more training. This is really important just because it also, back to the training, helps to see if court counselors are just skipping through training or if they're actually taking the time to listen to what is being said, because that can have a big loss of information if they're just skipping through to the end and then taking a quiz. And also the way that they do their training quizzes, usually as long as you take the quiz, it doesn't matter if you pass the quiz, it marks it as complete. So making sure that the quiz and test results are recorded to kind of see what areas people are struggling in so that they can roll out more training in person with the supervisors. So they have to sit and kind of listen to the videos and hear what the supervisors are saying just to kind of instill what is needed. And then also recording those to be able to have better outcomes in the future to kind of create programs based on what is needed in county and in state, especially because a lot of the focus is a state agency. A lot of the focus is at the top of the state, so through the ranks, but being able to take that evaluation plan and kind of go through and collect data using the quizzes and stuff like that can also really help. Thank you so much for listening.